There is a particular exhaustion that belongs to people who stayed. Not the exhaustion of someone who walked away and came back, not the dramatic arc, the far country, the hitting rock bottom and being found. The exhaustion of someone who never left, who showed up every week, served faithfully, gave generously, prayed consistently, and did everything that was asked of them, and who has spent years waiting for something to shift on the inside that never quite did. You know the feeling. The moment in a service when someone shares a testimony about their prodigal season, the drinking, the leaving, the dramatic return, and the room erupts. The tears, the applause, the sense of something holy happening, and you are sitting there thinking, I never left. I never did those things. I have been in this room for 20 years, and no one has ever cried like that for me. The particular sting of watching someone celebrated for returning to something you never abandoned. The way you have learned to perform the appropriate response, the smile, the nodding, the genuine looking appreciation while something underneath you is quietly asking a question you are almost ashamed to have. Does any of this count for anything? The Sunday morning when you are getting dressed for church and you realize you are doing it entirely on autopilot. Not with rebellion, not with doubt, exactly. Just with a hollowness that has settled in so gradually you cannot identify when it arrived. The way the language of faith has become a second language you speak fluently but no longer feel. The words come out right, the theology checks out, the behavior is correct, and something in your chest has gone very quiet. The moment you looked at someone whose faith seems alive and electric and real, and you thought, I don't know how to get to where they are from where I am, and I am not sure I have enough left to try. If you have felt this, you are not spiritually defective. You are not failing. You are not the one who got faith wrong while everyone else got it right. You are the older son, and what the story says to the older son, the part nobody tells you, the part that most sermons don't reach, is what I want to sit with you in today. Because the father in that story does something for the faithful one that has been quietly waiting in the text for 2,000 years. And it changes everything about what God thinks of people who stayed. Let me show you what I found. James had been in the same church for 26 years. Not attending serving, he was the person who showed up early to set up chairs, who visited the elderly members when nobody else remembered, who gave consistently and quietly for 2.5 decades without making it a story anyone told about him. He described himself, when we talked, as someone who had always been the responsible one in his family of origin. In his marriage, in his faith, he had never had the crisis, never needed the rescue, had simply kept walking, kept showing up, kept doing what faith asked of him, and somewhere around year 20 he started noticing something. The people with dramatic testimonies got the stage. The ones who came back from addiction, from walking away, from the far country, they had a narrative that the community knew how to celebrate. There was a shape to their story that everyone recognized. Brokenness, then rescue, then gratitude. The room knew what to do with that story. James didn't have that story. He had 26 years of quiet faithfulness that didn't translate into a narrative anyone could follow. His devotion didn't have a shape that produced testimony events. It was just accumulation. Years of mostly unglamorous showing up, he said. I started to feel like a supporting character in a story that wasn't about me. Like the whole faith is designed for people who needed dramatic rescue. And I am just here in the background holding things together while everyone else gets found. He sat with Luke 15 for a long time before he told me what he noticed. Most people know the parable of the prodigal son. The younger son takes his inheritance, wastes it in a far country, hits bottom, comes home, and the father runs to meet him. Robe, ring, sandals, fattened calf, a party, a celebration. Most sermons end there, or treat what comes next as a cautionary tale about resentment. But James had read the whole chapter, and he noticed something that changed everything for him. When the older son heard the music from the field and refused to go in, Luke 15:28 says this, his father came out and entreated him. His father came out. The father who ran to meet the returning prodigal also left the party to go to the resentful, faithful son standing outside. 2 exits, 2 pursuits, 2 sons, both sought. The father did not stay inside with the party and send someone to tell the older son to adjust his attitude. He came out. He left the celebration. He went to where his faithful son was standing in the dark, and he entreated him. The word is parakeo. It means to come alongside, to comfort, to urge with tenderness. The Father came alongside the Son who was angry about grace, who was exhausted from faithfulness, who felt invisible next to the drama of the return. And he did not lead with rebuke. He led with, "Son, you are always with me." James said, "I had read that parable 50 times, and I never noticed the Father left the party. I had spent 26 years feeling like a supporting character, and all that time the Father was also coming out to where I was." Let me take you back into Luke 15 more slowly, because there are layers in this text that most readings skip. The parable begins with the younger son asking for his inheritance early. In first-century Jewish culture, this request was roughly equivalent to saying, "I wish you were already dead." The inheritance was yours when the father died. Asking for it early was a social and relational rupture of enormous magnitude. The father gave it anyway, not because it was wise, not because it would end well. He gave it because the son asked. And then in the text includes this as a brief, almost throwaway line: he divided his property between them. Between them, the older son received his inheritance at the same moment the younger son received his. The party that would later be thrown for the prodigal's return was not funded by the older son's share. What the father lavished on the younger son was the younger son's own portion. The older son's portion was still intact. It had always been intact. This matters more than it seems, because when the older son storms up to the father later and says, "These many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat so I might celebrate with my friends," the father's answer is not, "Here is the goat you finally earned." The father says, "Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours." All that I have is yours, present tense. Not it will be yours when the time comes. Not you will receive it eventually if you keep behaving. It is yours right now, has been yours. The older son has been standing outside the house believing he was an employee when he was an heir. He served faithfully for years. The word he uses is doulo, which means to serve as a slave inside a household where he owned everything, where every resource, every animal, every field was legally his. And he never asked. Not once, in all those years, did he ask for the young goat for the celebration with his friends. And the father's response implies something devastating. He could have asked. He could have had it. The ask was available to him the whole time. This is the revelation. The older son's poverty was not imposed. It was inhabited. He lived like a servant inside an inheritance he had never claimed. He performed faithfulness as if it were earning something, when the thing he was working toward had already been given. And now I want to follow this thread into one more place, because it runs deeper than a single parable. In Genesis 32, Jacob is about to face his brother Esau, the brother he cheated, whose birthright he took. He sends everyone ahead and is left alone by the ford of the Jabbok in the night. And a man wrestled with him until daybreak, not Jacob attacking. Jacob being engaged by something he did not initiate. In the dark, in the place of his deepest fear and oldest guilt. When the stranger saw he could not prevail, he touched Jacob's hip and dislocated it. And Jacob, injured, clinging, said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." I want to sit with that posture. A man with a dislocated hip in the dark, holding on to the one who wounded him, saying, "I will not release my grip until you bless me." There is something in that image that speaks to the faithfully exhausted in a way the prodigal's story doesn't reach. The prodigal's story is about returning after leaving. Jacob's story is about demanding something that was already his. He was the heir, the one the covenant would run through while injured, while in the dark, while still afraid. "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And the man said, "What is your name, Jacob? Your name shall no longer be Jacob the supplanter, the one who grabs, but Israel, because you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed." The new name came from the wound and the clinging together, not from the polished performance, from the night of honest wrestling, from the refusing to let go, from the naming of the actual condition: I need to be blessed, and I am not releasing my grip until that happens. This is what the older son never did. He served and waited and assumed the blessing was accumulating automatically. He never wrestled for it. Never said directly, "I am not letting go until you bless me specifically." Never asked as a son rather than waiting as a servant. And the God of Genesis 32 is the God who blesses the one who wrestles honestly in the dark, not the one who performs correctly in the daylight. Now let me name why this is so hard to see, because the church, without meaning to, often communicates a version of the older son's transactional theology. Serve faithfully and God will reward you. Give generously and prosperity will follow. Stay through the hard seasons and breakthrough will come. These things are not entirely wrong, but when they become the framework, when faithfulness is primarily understood as the mechanism for receiving what God owes you, something quietly breaks. Because the reward doesn't always arrive on the schedule the framework promises. And when the people who didn't serve faithfully seem to receive abundant grace anyway, the framework starts to feel like a lie. And the person who stayed starts to wonder whether the staying meant anything at all. The older son's anger was not about resentment. It was about theology. He had a theology of transaction, and he was standing at the place where it had failed to deliver. And the father's answer was not, "Let me fix the transaction. Let me give you credit for your faithfulness. Let me make the math work." The father's answer was, "You have the wrong framework entirely. You were never an employee. You were always a son. And sons don't earn what is already theirs." James sat with that passage for 3 weeks, not reading commentaries, just sitting with it, reading it slowly, the way you read something that might be about you. He said the first thing that cracked was the phrase, "All that I have is yours." He had heard it before, had probably underlined it at some point, but he had always processed it as future tense, the eventual inheritance. What would come to him when the time was right, when he had finally done enough of the right things for long enough. He had never read it as present tense, as a description of now. Of always, he said, "I have been living like someone who is waiting to receive something that was already transferred to me years ago. Like I have been sending payment for a house I already own, making repairs as if I am a tenant, when I am actually the one whose name is on the deed." And then he said something quieter. He said, "I think I also never asked. In 26 years of faithful service, I don't think I have ever actually asked for the young goat. I have served and waited and assumed that the faithfulness was accumulating interest somewhere, that God was keeping the ledger and at some point would make it right. But I don't think I have ever just sat down with God and said, 'Here is what I actually need. Here is what I am carrying. Here is what I am asking for specifically.' I had been a faithful servant in a house where I was always an heir, and I never asked as an heir. Here is the cultural observation I want to name directly. The contemporary church has developed a theology of testimony that privileges the dramatic over the faithful. We know how to celebrate the prodigal's return. We have built the entire architecture of Sunday morning, the music, the altar call, the tears, the testimonies around the shape of that story. Brokenness to rescue, darkness to light, the far country to the Father's house. This is not wrong. That story is real and it is beautiful. But it has created as a byproduct a community where the older son's story has no liturgy. No Sunday morning moment designed for the person who never left. No celebration for the quiet accumulation of decades. No testimony structure for, "I stayed, and it cost me a great deal. And some days it felt like nothing, and some days it felt like everything, and I am still here." The faithful invisible have learned, in this environment, to translate their experience into the acceptable story form, to find the dramatic moments, the near misses, the seasons of doubt that function as miniature far countries, to locate their walk with God in the moments that have the right shape, the crisis averted, the prayer dramatically answered, the season of wandering and the return, because those are the moments that the community knows how to receive. And what gets left behind in the translation is the actual texture of the thing. The long Tuesdays, the sustained and unspectacular showing up, the faithfulness that didn't produce a testimony event, but produced a life, a character, a quality of presence that the community took for granted because it was always there. The church has learned to celebrate what is lost and found. It has not yet learned to celebrate what never left. And that learning gap has left an entire category of spiritually faithful people feeling like they don't have a real story. Like their experience of faith is somehow lesser for its lack of drama. Like the inheritance went to the ones who came back, and they were left standing outside with 26 years of service, and no one crying over them. You might recognize this in your own story. The moment you realized your faith didn't have the right shape for the community's language, that the thing you actually lived, the long faithfulness, the quiet staying, the sustained commitment that produced no dramatic testimony, didn't translate into the form that got celebrated. The way you have learned to find the moments in your story that fit the expected arc, and the way that finding has left the rest of your experience unwitnessed, unseen, filed under. Background character. The specific loneliness of being the one who stayed in a community that reserves its tears for the ones who came back. If that is where you have been, you are not the supporting character. You are the son whose story the father interrupted a party to tell. He left the music. He came to where you were standing. He came alongside. And he said, "Son, you are always with me." The faithfulness was not invisible. It was the proximity itself. And the proximity was the inheritance you were living in all along. So what does God think about the people who stayed? He leaves the party to find them. That is the answer the text gives. Not eventually, not after the party winds down and the father has time to address outstanding business. In the middle of the music, in the middle of the celebration, the father comes out to where his faithful son is standing in the dark. He comes alongside. He entreats with tenderness. And here is what I want to say about that exit. The father had every reason to stay inside. The celebration was his party. The younger son was inside, alive and returned, and at the table, the joy of the found thing was in full expression. The father could have sent a servant with a message, could have said, "Tell my older son I will speak with him when the celebration settles." He came out. The exiting is not incidental to the story. It is the point. The same God who ran down the road to meet the returning prodigal also left the room full of music to go to the son who was standing in the dark resenting the music. Both movements are in the text. Both sons are pursued. Both exits are deliberate. The God of Luke 15 does not specialize in the dramatic rescue and leave the faithful ones to sustain themselves. He is not the God of spectacular recoveries who treats quiet, sustained faithfulness as adequate but unremarkable. He is the God who interrupts his own celebration to come alongside the one whose exhaustion has gone unwitnessed. And what he says when he arrives matters as much as that he arrived. "Son, you are always with me." Not, "I see your faithfulness, and I will reward it." Not, "Here is recognition for 26 years of showing up." Not, "Let me finally give you what the transaction entitled you to." "You are always with me." The inheritance the older son could not see was the presence itself, the nearness, the unbroken access, the continuous proximity to the father that the younger son had traded away for a season, and the older son had inhabited without ever fully receiving. The party for the prodigal was a party for something that had been lost and was found. The older son had never been lost. He had never been separated from the presence. He had been in it the entire time, every year of the faithful service, every season of the quiet staying, every day of the doulo, the slave service, the work he thought he was performing to earn what was already his. "You are always with me," the father says. Not, "You will be with me." Not, "You have been with me always." Present continuous, ongoing. Now and all that I have is yours. This is not a promise about the future. This is a description of the present that the older son has not been inhabiting. The inheritance was available the whole time. The presence was the inheritance. This is what God's character looks like toward the faithfully exhausted. Not a God who grades on a curve and gives extra credit for longevity. Not a God who apologizes that the merit system didn't pay out as promised. Not a God who says, "You are right. You deserved more recognition. Let me compensate for the oversight." A God who says, "You have been in the thing the whole time. You have been standing inside the answer to the question you were asking. The presence you were performing your way toward was never at the end of the performance. It was always already here. You are always with me. You have always been with me, all of this. All of it, every resource, every acre, everything that belongs to this house, has been yours since the day your father divided the property." And James, after 26 years of serving as a slave inside a house he owned, sat with that sentence for 3 weeks. And then he asked for the young goat. He said he sat down one morning with a cup of coffee and said to God, "Here is what I actually need. Here is what I have been carrying for years and haven't named. Here is what I want from this relationship that I have been waiting for you to give me automatically," he said. It felt strange to ask, like I was being presumptuous, like I didn't have the right. And then he remembered sons ask, employees wait to be given. Sons ask, he asked. He said it was the most honest prayer he had prayed in 20 years. You can stop performing the faithfulness, not because faithfulness doesn't matter. It matters enormously. The staying is real. The cost of the staying is real. The long, unspectacular Tuesday after Tuesday of showing up is one of the most sacred things a human being can do. But faithfulness was never the performance that earns the presence. It is what presence looks like from the outside when someone is living from the inside out. It is not the cause of the inheritance. It is one of the fruits of having received it. The presence you have been faithful inside of the nearness you have inhabited through all the seasons of the faithful service that is the inheritance itself. You don't have to earn your way to the party. You have been inside the inheritance the whole time. The Father has come out. He is standing where you are. He is not leading with rebuke. He is saying, son, daughter, you are always with me tomorrow morning. When you are getting ready for the week and the familiar hollowness arrives, when you wonder again whether any of the quiet faithfulness is landing anywhere, whether anyone is keeping the ledger, whether the staying has meant anything, you might notice something different now. That hollowness is not evidence of failure. It is the older son standing at the edge of an inheritance he has been living in without fully receiving. The next time someone shares a dramatic testimony and the room erupts and you feel that particular sting, the one that you have carried alone for years because it seemed too small and too ungracious to name, you will know what it is now. It is real. The question it raises is legitimate. And the Father has already left the party to come and stand where you are. When you are in a service and the faith that used to feel alive feels quiet and flat, instead of diagnosing your way back to feeling it, try a different question. Not what am I doing wrong, but what am I not receiving that has always been available? The next time you notice that you have been waiting for the blessing to arrive automatically, as the result of accumulated faithfulness, consider the young goat. Consider asking, not because you have finally earned the right to ask, because you have always been an heir. And heirs ask. The Father's answer to the son who stayed was not, I will reward you eventually. It was, everything here is already yours. Ask for what you need. And when the familiar feeling rises, the invisible one, the supporting character one, the 26 years, and nobody cried for me one, remember that the Father left the music. He is not inside waiting for you to get your theology right before he comes to you. He has already come out. He is already at the place where you are. He is already saying, you are always with me. And all that is here, all of it is yours. You have been in the inheritance the whole time. Tomorrow morning, when you are getting ready for the week and the familiar hollowness arrives, when you wonder again whether any of the quiet faithfulness is landing anywhere, you might notice something different now. That hollowness is not evidence of failure. It is the older son standing at the edge of what was always his, not quite sure how to walk into it. The next time someone shares a dramatic testimony and the room erupts, and you feel that particular sting, the one you have never quite been able to name, you will know what it is now. It is the older son watching the robe and the ring and the fattened calf. The feeling is real, the question it raises is legitimate, and the Father has already left the celebration to come and stand where you are. When you are sitting in a service and the faith that used to feel alive feels quiet and flat, instead of diagnosing yourself, try staying in the question, what would it mean to receive what is already mine? Not to earn it, not to perform into it, just to receive what has been present the whole time. The next time you notice that you have never actually asked that in all the years of faithful service, you have been waiting for God to notice and reward, rather than simply naming what you need, consider the young goat. Ask for it, not because you have finally earned the right, because you are an heir, and heirs ask. And when the voice comes that says your story doesn't have the right shape, that faithful and quiet and unglamorous doesn't translate into the testimony form that gets celebrated, remember what the Father said to the Son. Standing in the dark outside the party, he said, you are always with me. Not, you will be honored eventually. Not, your turn for celebration is coming. Always, right now, already. The presence you have been living in for all these years of quiet faithfulness, that presence is not the waiting room before the inheritance. It is the inheritance. You have been in it the whole time.